Gentlemen, good to see you. I hope you both had a good Thanksgiving.
Hey guys. Hey Sean. Hey Tim.
Hey,
I'm stuffed.
Yep.
I got my cashmere sweaters
You're-
on. It's freezing outside. I'm stuffed.
Yeah, I think I have a few more laps around the block to go to earn a little of what I did. Hey, I know you guys over at Newsbusters have got a real cool new tool coming out, a news crawler. David, tell me a little bit about what you guys have up your sleeve.
Yeah, man. The MRC News Crawler, as it's tentatively named right now, we're putting it through its paces. But one of the things I was trying to figure out, I'll back it up just a couple of seconds. All of our friends and even some of our contributors will say to me all the time when I'm on the road, well, who reads the New York Times? I don't know anyone who reads the New York Times anymore. I don't know anyone who watches NBC anymore. And then the team and I were sitting around, we're looking at our charts, and we go by this Press Gazette chart, which I've got right here, that shows the top 50 news websites in America every single month. And routinely, the New York Times is number one at over 400 million hits a month. Okay, routinely, CNN is number two at over 330 million hits a month. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, especially in the case of CNN, whose ratings have fallen through the toilet. New York Times, I could see because they've got Wordle and crossword puzzles and other things. But even if you cut that number in half, there's still a huge number. And so it's difficult when we've got contributors and we've got our friends in the media saying, well, I don't know anybody who reads this stuff, but the numbers don't bear that out. Hundreds of millions of people are going to these websites still every single month. And one of the things that we've been able to figure out with this MRC crawler is big is augmenting big. So Google, Yahoo, Apple, and Microsoft are the four biggest news aggregators in the country going right now, and they're in the top. Those four are in the top 10 news websites in the country. Those guys are augmenting the New York Times. They're pumping traffic into the New York Times, pumping traffic into CNN, pumping traffic into USA Today. I mean, Sean, I think you'd appreciate this. Newsweek was sold for $1 15 years ago. $1. And it is the number 16th.
So you think it got overpaid? They overpaid.
Yeah, well, what a bargain. They're the number 16th rated news website in America today. Okay, at 68 million hits a month. Okay, it was sold for $1. How is it getting all this traffic? Well, it's not the big conservative social media ecosystem that we've developed over the last 10 to 15 years. It is that these big aggregators are keeping these guys alive and keeping these guys in business. And they're giving them a visibility that is not earned. Okay, it's essentially visibility that is assigned to the American consumer. And so when you ask yourself, well, how does Kamala Harris get 48.3% of the vote? Well, this is one of the reasons why. Sort of the low information or the sort of the scroller consumer of news that's just going to Apple, going to Google News, thinking it's fair and normal and balanced and not part of the regular political machinations that we get ourselves wrapped up into. They're just giving traffic to CBS, NBC, New York Times, CNN all day, every day. Now Fox is up there too. But I'd like to see if we could socialize the news a little bit to get some of our players, some of the conservative media ecosystem up the ladder. You have to go all the way down into the mid-30s to find Breitbart. So that's going to be the really cool thing about this crawler is that it's going to provide the empirical evidence as to how many times Google shared the New York Times per month versus how many times it shared Breitbart versus how many times it shared the New York Post, Washington Post versus Washington Times, Fox versus Newsmax. It's really going to be pretty cool, innovative tool for editors all across the country to see where they stand with the four big news aggregators in the country.
Interesting. So we'll have you're basically going to add some transparency to this. We'll now know where they're actually getting their hits.
Yeah, and then we've got to do our own investigation in terms of are these exclusivity contracts that some of the big boys that we've spent. I mean, Tim especially has spent the better part of his entire career going after the New York Times and PBS and these places, and we've proven all sorts of benefits to that work. But we're going to be able to quantify to the number how many times the big four aggregators have been supporting liberal media, the liberal media enclave, as it were. every single month, almost in real time. So that's what we're putting it through its paces right now. We're trying to break it right now, and then we're going to roll it out in 2026.
All right, guys, if you need a great night's sleep, do what I do every single night. Use Beam's Dream Powder. Right now, the ultimate cyber discount is available to my listeners, only 50% off, the best deal going that you are going to thank me for, because you're going to sleep better. You're going to stay asleep, wake up feeling refreshed. Go to shopbeam.com/Spicer. Use code Spicer for 50% off for a very, very limited time during their cyber sale. Shopbeam.com/Spicer, code word Spicer, 50% off. Let's congrats on that, by the way, because I think what I love about the work that you guys do is that it's like, it's not just what people read, it's what they don't read and what they don't get information on. And what you guys largely do that I think is super helpful is expose stuff, the studies. I was just reading something on your site today about the shutdown and how just unbelievably tilted the news was to the left. And no one will ever tell you that. And that goes to your point, David, which is that people wonder why people think the way they do. And if all you hear is one side of an argument, then it's not a real difficult stretch to figure out, well, if I only hear one side is bad and one side is good, I'll logically probably come to that conclusion myself, because that's all the information that I've been given.
Right. I mean, if your stock browser is Yahoo, and Yahoo's chock full of NBC, ABC, CBS, PBS, CNN, Fox, ABC, NBC, ABC, PBS, CNN, Fox, then you're going to walk away thinking that everybody in the country hates Trump. I mean, because that's all they do. That's all they showcase, or things are anti-Trump or anti-conservative. Or in the moment right now, I think this fake fight that this conservative versus conservative crime, that we're all fractured, and that we're all ticked off at each other. Meanwhile, we're about to go hang out at everybody's Christmas parties, one after the other after the other. So
that by the way, that's one of my big infuriating things when I read Playbook. All these people on the right who end up hanging out and buddying up with all these people in the media on the left. And then we wonder, we get co-opted. So many of these people don't realize that they're getting co-opted by it. Tim Graham, David name-checked PBS and talked about all your work. Before I get into the news of the day, though, because I want to break down some of this with you guys, there was a great study that you guys, or a great story that you put out on Newsbusters, which is something that I've been saying for decades. John Oliver put up, 1.5 million for PBS?
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And my whole thing has always been, there's no reason. It's like poor people who talk about, wanting to pay higher taxes. My view is there's nothing that stops you from doing this. And so for all the people on the left that love PBS and NPR, my view was, great, then just pay for it. And you guys have a great story up about John Oliver doing just that.
right. And look, we had to get to this point where the Congress and Donald Trump defunded PBS and NPR so we could show what we've always suggested. The liberals will pay for it. Of course the liberals will pay for it. They wanted us to pay for it. And they wanted that idea of, if the liberals are all the ones that pay for it, then we kind of figure out who it's for. Well, we've always known who it's for, and there was some debate among conservatives when this was happening, when the defunding was on the way. And they were like, but wait, what if PBS and NPR get worse? I'm like, define worse. I mean, it's been horrible for a long time. I really had no thought process that it was going to get worse than it already is. And what was fascinating about this last round, Sean, was that when all the defunding sounds came, they didn't change anything. They didn't move to the center one tick. They stayed right where they were. And yeah, every study we've done over the last few years shows just a dramatic tilt, whether it's their tilt on transgender issues, their tilt on immigration, any issue you pick, there's just a dramatic tilt in favor of the liberal view. So yes, they should be paying for it. And yeah, if you like John Oliver, and you must be a PBS and NPR fan.
The funny thing is, as you were saying that, Tim Graham, I kept thinking to myself, is this really any different than what the liberals want to do with everything, which is, we want something, someone else should pay for it? I was like, it's literally like you just encapsulated their entire philosophy. I do want to move on to sort of some of the heavier news. Over this holiday weekend, we saw this tragic event unfold in Washington, D.C., this Afghan national. And we've now had a bunch of reaction to the reaction. And what I mean by that is President Trump, I think, acted very decisively, talking about revetting some of these Afghan nationals. And the media went into like super hyper freak out mode by saying that this, when Trump says that we got to have a review of people, we got to ban certain places that we don't have fidelity in terms of their customs and background checks, the media immediately turned, David, and said, okay, this is now racism. This is the problem. You've now, it's all racism. These are brown countries, brown people that you're really going after.
Yeah. Look, if for those Afghanis that helped our armed services in Afghanistan, I applaud you and thank you, and you're welcome for being able to come here for the last couple of years. But I don't think it's outside the realm of expectation, given what's happened, that we ask those people to self-back report and say, what are you doing in the country so far? What have you contributed to the United States so far? What do you plan on contributing to the United States so far? I don't think that's racist at all, given that two young people, one fighting for his life still, and the girl having since passed away. I don't think that's outside the realm of expectation at all. And in the press, a sober press covering something fairly, covering this kind of issue fairly, would recognize that, and patiently would recognize the need to keep American citizens safe and secure, and would not respond with such vitriol that all of a sudden President Trump is a racist again. For wanting to secure American safety. I mean, it's a ludicrous charge, but this is, Elon Musk talks about this. I was just going through his Twitter feed earlier today about how he used to talk about the woke mind virus, and it's a clever name, but he actually had the statistics to back this up. The amount of the use of the word racist or racism in liberal media coverage post 2020 talking about Republicans is extraordinary, and then into the 2024 campaign. And this is the kind of content that Google and Apple and Yahoo are forcing down people's phones all day, every day. So it's absolutely imperative that the Media Research Center, document and expose every word of this.
Yeah. Tim Grant, the thing that I find fascinating is, David mentioned this, but this is the job of every government, is to protect its people. And there's no question. We knew it at the time. We were letting a lot of people in that we didn't have a strong background on. There are stories out there now about people buying their backgrounds. There's just the way some of these countries operate. They don't have the sort of the record keeping and identification means that we do, or a lot of developed countries, just to be frank. And so when you bring them in, you say, are you Bob? Yeah, I'm Bob. Oh, have you committed a crime, Bob? Nope. You Google Bob and nothing comes up and you go, okay, must be fine. I think one of the things that I found fascinating about this particular case in terms of the killer is that there were some checkpoints that apparently he didn't weigh in on. And to David's point, there are some stipulations with these individuals that come in. They have to check in once a year. And this guy apparently hadn't even done that. There's an element to which I think allowing people to come into the country, I don't know that it's more not racist. It's stupid if you don't do these checks.
Yeah, and let's try to imagine, it's very wildly controversial now in the media that Trump is trying to have a mass deportation. But they don't really acknowledge that what happened under Biden was a mass importation. And they didn't have any vetting standards. They were not only just letting them crawl across the border, they were flying them in from like Haiti. They were flying in the immigrants. And so there was a lot of unvetted people in there. But, when it comes to the media, you look at a crime like this, they went right back to the 2017 Muslim ban sort of frame of reference. And migrant crime is that to them is such a Trumpy issue that their response to all of this was to talk about Trump, not to talk about the actual shooter. I was watching PBS NewsHour on Friday night, and they spent the entire pundit segment talking about Trump. I don't think they even said the shooter's name. And Jonathan Capehart basically suggested that well, the shooter was doing something good in Afghanistan, right? That's why he got into the country. Well, we don't even know if he did anything good. But he was more willing to say something nice about the shooter than he was about Trump. And that's where we are. And that, yeah, they had Peter Wayner was in for David Brooks. And Peter Wayner was like, it was like K Part 1 and K Part 2. More reason to defund PBS.
I would be
Well,
really curious, and we'll never get an answer to this, but I would be very, very curious if this guy was supposed to have been checked, vetted, had his 1 year checkup during the shutdown, and the shutdown prevented that from happening. That would be, well, I mean, well, nobody will ever admit that, but that would be something.
Well, the other thing is, though, that this they say, well, the Trump administration granted him asylum in April. So they had been in office for 3 months, right? And all on the Sunday shows, Jonathan Karl and everyone else was like, this is on the Trump administration because they granted asylum. And I'm like, you guys in the Biden administration, they passed along, I'm sure, a file or a folder or something and said, this individual's been vetted. They've applied for asylum. I mean, it's not like that happened within 90 days. This happened over years. And I think if there's anything, it's that they assume that the Biden administration had done their job.
Well, and I think, look, one of the things we're always going to track here, and Curtis Houck was on this early in the middle of all the holiday celebration, is the first thing they do is, who do we blame? Do we blame Biden? Do we blame Trump? And a lot of people just want to say, how did this happen? How did this person just walk up and shoot people?
Yeah.
And, you know, you can't even have the horror of how this happened and mourn how this happened before the blame games kick in. And I think that's one of those things where the average news consumer, who may not be a heavy news consumer, is like, why do we always have to figure out who to pin this on? Let's start by blaming it on the shooter, which they never seem to do.
But David, you guys, there's a great story out at the Media Research Center where there's a guy who had 72 prior arrests with 10 felonies on his record, and he set a woman on fire in Chicago, and everyone goes, "Gosh, how did this happen?" And it's like, but to Tim's point, at what point did you think maybe that's enough? Like, he's been arrested 72 times, 10 felonies, and then everyone on the 11th goes, "Gosh, you know what? Probably he wasn't a good man."
Same thing's happening in Charlotte with the girl who was killed on the bus, and now you've got ICE and federal law enforcement officials trying to clean up Charlotte for Charlotte, and Trump is decreed as a racist for that. I mean, a Ukrainian refugee murdered in cold blood, okay, on a public subway system, okay, in Charlotte. Trump declares that he's going to try to do something to take care of this city, the queen city of the South, and the press is all over him for how dare he want to enforce immigration law, how dare he want to enforce basic criminal law, get these people back in prisons where they belong. So it's par for the course. And 72 criminal violations apparently is not enough.
Sean, this is what happens in blue cities, right? Chicago hasn't had a Republican mayor since what, 1926? I mean, it's most of these cities have been long run by the Democrats, not only with Democrat mayors, but overwhelmingly Democratic city councils, New York, D.C., etc. And our national media, the last thing they're going to do is hold blue state, blue city mayors accountable for anything. They just don't do that. And obviously, the other problem, though, is we can all look at them and say, this is who you keep voting for.
Let me just bring up one other point, too. I was talking to a National Guardsman out of Louisiana. I was visiting my daughter who's in college down there. And he was just up in Washington, D.C. about 2 months ago. And he said the only problems he got was from white liberal women, residents of Washington, D.C., who came up and spat on him.
What?
Spat on him. And for just being there. All he was doing was keeping the peace. That's all he was charged with doing. And his poor kid 19-year-old kid from Louisiana is getting spit on. So, I want to take this opportunity to thank the National Guard who has come into Washington, D.C. Those of us who remember the 2019 Washington Nationals World Series run remember how safe it was to walk down New Jersey Avenue, no problem, in the middle of a weeknight game. I used to do that with my kids, and I would not dare do that during the Biden administration. Not dare. not with shootings outside home plate gate, for God's sakes. But these kids have come in from across the country and I think saved Washington, D.C. from itself and gotten rid of the worst of the worst. And D.C.'s better off for it.
100%. I totally agree with you. By the way, I got to say this. I've made it a point as I walk through DC to stop and thank these guys because they're 19, 20, 21 years old. And to your point, David, they're told, like, you join the military and then you take orders, right? So this isn't a choice. Although that, God bless that young woman, Sarah Beckstrom, the only choice she made was to volunteer for additional duty that Thanksgiving weekend so that someone else could be with their family.
Right.
The choices they make are to actually give more of themselves.
Right.
And to have somebody disrespect you. God forbid I see somebody ever doing that to one of these folks. You're going to have to hold me back.
She's serving the country, following the chain of command. And I find it ironic that she gets murdered for doing so, while you've got this seditious six running around trying to get her not to. It's just deplorable behavior on those guys' part as well.
You know, Tim Graham, you mentioned your colleague there, Curtis Hoke, and some of the work he did. He called out MS Now. I still can't get my head around MSNBC. It'll always be MSDNC to me, but I want to play for you this clip that he has of an NBC, and that's what Ken was for a long time. I guess he chose shirts or skins. He went full liberal. But this is him covering the National Guard shooting. Take a look.
But of course, you know, there's so much controversy happening in the United States right now with ICE, who are also wearing uniforms and wearing masks. And so you don't know, people walking around with uniforms in an American city. There are some Americans that might object to that. And so apparently this shooting has happened.
So there's some Americans that might object to that, Tim Graham. People wearing uniforms. That's what Ken Delaney from MS or MS Now or whatever the heck we're calling it. But like, I found that, again, so offensive that somehow now he's trying to work in ICE and be like, and then secondly, be like, wearing a uniform is what people find offensive in this country.
Yeah, well, again, you're defining the way liberals are. Yes, let's guess. We'll just guess that white liberal women spitting on members of the National Guard watch Nicole Wallace nightly. That would be my guess. That these are MS Now type of people. It's really fascinating because obviously we remember that they were all super in favor of law enforcement in 2021. And now we've gotten to 2025 and ICE is Trump's Gestapo. The National Guard are like, this is the fist of authoritarianism. And this is like the daily drumbeat from the MS Nows and the CNNs. It's really remarkable. And it's like, okay, who hates law enforcement now?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine seeing somebody in uniform in Washington, D.C. It's the nation's capital. I mean, this isn't
everybody wears a
Buffalo.
uniform here. Metro drivers wear a uniform. Right. Police officers wear a uniform. Park police wear a uniform. The people at the Smithsonian wear a uniform. I mean, like, this to me, that just shows you how I mean, it's a combination of stupid and just making excuses for this. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.